Welcome to Flipped Middle School. You were probably some of the first, if not the first students in Georgia to experience flipped school. You're probably asking yourself, what is flipped school? Using your own technology on your own time, you will acquire new information. When you come to class, you'll have the opportunity to demonstrate what you've learned through activities planned by Coach English and Mr. Kelly. Let's get started. Our first lesson is about Reconstruction. When the peace treaties had been signed after the Civil War and fighting was over, the country still needed to be put back together. One country formed from two, the United States of America and the Confederate States of America. The question was, how do you reconstruct a country? The nation had been ripped into two parts. The job of putting it back together, or reconstructing the country, would be a difficult one. The question, how difficult? Plans were proposed on how to put the country back together. In all, there were 4 plans proposed at different times. Each successive plan would make it more difficult for the South's rebellious states to be readmitted to the Union.
The first Reconstruction Plan is known as the 10% Plan. This plan was actually proposed by President Lincoln 2 years before the end of the war. So this plan was proposed while the war was actually still going on. You're going to see that the second plan, known as the Wade-Davis Bill, was also proposed before the war was even over. After the South surrenders to the North, Lincoln's plan would require that 10% of all voters in a state swear loyalty to the Union and slavery be abolished in that state in order for them to be readmitted into the United States of America. Before this plan could be put into place, Lincoln was assassinated. The second plan is known as the Wade-Davis Bill. Again, this plan was proposed before the end of the war, and it was proposed by a Republican Congress made up entirely of Northern representatives. So the South had no voice in what this plan says. When this plan was proposed by the Congress, Lincoln actually refuses to sign this bill. He preferred his 10% plan. This plan would have required that 50% of all white men, or over 50% of white men, swear loyalty to the Union, and they would actually prevent any soldier or volunteer who fought against the North from voting or holding office. Obviously, this was not a very popular plan, which is why Lincoln did not approve it. The third plan comes about after Lincoln is assassinated, and it is called the Johnson Plan, named after President Andrew Johnson. President Johnson took over the office when Lincoln was assassinated in April 1865. His plan is very similar to the Wade-Davis Bill, but has a few differences. It requires a majority of white men, again, over 50%, to swear loyalty. They would have to ratify the 13th Amendment, which abolishes slavery, and he would actually allow former Confederate officials to vote and hold office. The last plan is the Reconstruction Act. This plan was proposed by Republicans in Congress after the war is over. This plan would require that states must disband their government, they must write a new constitution, the 14th Amendment must be ratified, which establishes citizenship for all men regardless of race, and African American men would be allowed to vote. This is the plan that Georgia re-entered into the Union under.